Thank you so much. Everybody who has been on the line with us this whole time, thank you so much for joining us and sticking with us. I am today's last presenter, so you're in the home stretch. I'm running the anchor leg. As I mentioned at the beginning, I'm with Aura, which is a relatively new company to the market, although we have combined several long-term companies together to bring forth the first integrated platform for cyber wellness. So we believe that identity theft protection alone is not enough to keep you safe. And based on what Charles and Ryan and Jim all told you, I think that they've proved that pretty well. So we've incorporated identity tools into other tools around data privacy and device and network security. And I'll show you a little bit about how all of that works and how it could work together for you as individuals as well as your employees. So this new category of cyber wellness, it's not really the fourth pillar of wellness. We all know physical, mental, and financial wellness has been proven, as a very important thing for all of us to pay attention to, both personally, but also for employers to focus on for their employees. A physically, mentally, and fiscally healthy person is typically going to show up to work more often. They're going to have, they're going to be more productive while they're there. They're going to probably stay at the company longer. So wellness as an investment for an employer is a proven ROI. What we see is that because so much of what we do today is online, it's very important to also think of cyber wellness as an area of focus in order to fully achieve physical, mental, and financial wellness. You have to protect yourself online. We're just doing too many things digitally these days to not have that type of thing protected. So when we look at cyber wellness, we think of what one person might need to do in order to proactively prevent cybercrime. And that includes protecting your identity, but it also includes protecting your devices, the Wi-Fi networks that you use, your privacy, keeping your data safe and secure, protecting your social reputation, and protecting any assets that you might have. So it goes well beyond identity theft and what everyone needs to do. I think, as you've seen from the different speakers we've had today, there's a lot of things that you might have to think about on a daily basis if you wanted to achieve cyber wellness on your own. So let's kind of go through all of those different areas and talk about what really needs to be done to achieve cyber wellness. A lot of this is reinforcing what the gentlemen who went before me have said, but we are looking at how can we pull it all together into one automated system so that we can make it easy for people to achieve cyber wellness. So the first step is identity theft protection. Identity theft protection is so important. And if you as an individual or your employees do not have access to this tool, to a tool that can protect your identity, I highly recommend you do that as quickly as possible. There's a million vendors out there, but identity theft protection is really just the first step. Identity theft protection is going to monitor the dark web and all those other places online that most of us don't even really know about, and identify whether or not our information is showing up in places where it could easily be accessed by cyber criminals. Identity theft protection also monitors your credit to determine if anyone is attempting to purchase something in your name. And you can also enter all kinds of different accounts to be able to monitor all the activity. I think Ryan was just talking about when his wife goes to Target, he gets a notification that an amount has been spent at Target. So you're well aware of what's happening within all of your accounts. The next thing, though, and identity theft alone really is not going to cover you completely because it's a reactive service. It's going to monitor and alert you when things are going wrong so that you can take action and try to remedy the situation. But it really would be nice to go ahead and prevent theft before it happens. So if you wanted to do that, you'd also need to think about protecting all of the different devices that you use. And I know that the company as a whole typically protects the company network and the company devices, but what we're talking about is personal devices. So as your employees are out there in the world, traveling around using, well, not traveling as much these days, but working from home, using all kinds of different devices, their children are at home, trying to take school from home on a computer. We've just got so many people using so many different devices. And it's so easy for these hackers to attack with malware, ransomware, viruses of all different kinds. And so in addition to monitoring your information to see if it's out there on the web, if anyone's actually accessed it, you also want to go ahead and put up some additional protections for each one of those devices. So that would be an antivirus, anti-malware type of thing. And I don't have to give you these statistics, but it's kind of amazing how much this type of attempted theft has increased just in the past few years. And of course, it's skyrocketed since the outbreak of the pandemic. Devices alone are not enough to protect. You also needed to protect that Wi-Fi network that you're using. Ryan was talking about the routers and changing passwords and updating that. It really is something that you do need to pay attention to, not only at home, but at wherever you are, whatever public Wi-Fi you might be accessing, or hotspots. There's just so many different ways to get online these days, and a lot of those networks do not have the level of security that you would expect with a company. And so really being able to add a layer in to doubly protect yourself when you're using what could be an unsecured network. I think it's interesting, one of these statistics here on the screen says that 53% of people cannot tell the difference between a secure hotspot network and an insecure one. And I work in cybersecurity, and I really can't tell the difference if I'm just, going through the airport or trying to access the internet wherever I might be. So it really is such a challenging thing for the average person to be able to tell the difference between what's secure and not secure. So you definitely want to think about having additional levels of security on all the networks you use. Another area that can be extremely damaging to your personal life is your social reputation. And when social media first came out many years ago, a lot of us thought it was kind of silly, or what's it going to do? And now it has become a way of life. You can't deny the fact that people are socializing online, and there's a whole nother level of interaction with so many more people now because we have this online connection. So it's really important to understand what's out there about you. What kind of information might be linked to any of your social media accounts, or even if someone has posted something negative and tagged you in it, that could lead to a negative view of your personal beliefs. We see that companies are constantly checking social media as a part of a screening process for new candidates before an offer is made. So your social image could literally cost you a job. Another type of identity theft that we see quite often is people using identities while they commit a crime, so that if they are caught for the crime, they're giving your information to the police, and therefore they can continue committing crimes under other people's names. Many identity theft or cybercrime victims don't even know that they've been a victim of a crime until the police show up at their front door and they have a warrant out for their arrest. That is a very big challenge to undo. And so with the traditional ways of identity theft protection, which will tell you after the fact, you could end up in jail and having to work yourself out of that and prove that you didn't commit the crime that happened in your name. Another area of protection is all of the assets that we have. We see with identity theft protection, you can monitor accounts. You can have alerts to tell you if a certain charge is over a certain amount, or if it's coming from an unknown source. But it's really, again, just going to tell you about what's happening, and that's up to you to take action. So within your cyber wellness solution, you need to have something that's going to block people from being able to get into those bank accounts. Ryan was saying, use credit cards instead of debit cards, because debit cards are really cash. Once the cash is gone, you're kind of out of luck. So it's kind of the same thing. Just keep people from getting into those accounts altogether. We also are seeing a huge increase in crime around home titles. Hackers have learned how to get into these home title networks, change the name from you into them, and then be able to leverage the value of your home to commit all kinds of additional fraud and theft. So it's extremely important to not only monitor, but lock down these different accounts, keep hackers from being able to access this information, and stay on top of all these new types of crimes that are showing up. One thing that's not even on this slide that has been something that we've seen an enormous increase in since COVID started is unemployment fraud. There's so many millions of Americans filing for unemployment these days. The system is just overwhelmed, and that is ripe for hackers to take over and jump in and take some information. So if someone files an unemployment claim in your name, all of a sudden now you're on the hook for having filed for that claim, even if you're still employed. So it's just another way that these cyber criminals are getting extremely creative. And that really leads us to privacy. Privacy in itself it's a huge kind of problem to solve, right? It's almost its own industry with how many different vendors you see out there and how many different ways you could look to protect your data. But the key to maintaining your privacy is being careful about what you post online, being careful about what people can see in the background of your video calls and all the things that we've been talking about today. But it's also so important to constantly be looking for places where your data might be and cleaning that up, removing that. So everybody knows you can click a link or make a phone call and get your name put on a do not call list. If anybody's ever gone through the process of doing that, you probably know that it's relatively time consuming, and within a week, 2 weeks of finally getting off those lists, your name's probably getting put back on, because we're always going online and compromising our privacy and our security for convenience. It's so much easier to allow Google to autofill our forms. It's so much easier to accept cookies and continue on with our day without really thinking about what that means. So privacy is something that is an enormously time-consuming and can be a very challenging thing to manage for an individual. So what you need to look for in privacy tools are tools that are going to be constantly working behind the scenes. Think about your privacy tool as the Roomba vacuum. It's going to just follow you around online and pick up everything you leave behind. And that's the way that you need to have a tool that is going to be proactively removing your data again and again from these lists, because you're constantly doing things that are re-exposing you, even if you've taken the time to remove your data with all these data aggregators and email solicitation robocall groups. So it's so important to maintain privacy, and that is something that needs to be done on a daily, hourly basis. And finally, all of these different areas of concern and everything that we've touched on today, all the different ways to secure yourself and to ensure cyber wellness as an individual, all those same protections really need to be expanded to your family members. Children are the number one group that are targets of cybercrime. It is so easy to steal a child's identity because they have social security numbers, but they don't use them in any way, and they don't until they get to be the teenage years. They're not online. They're not putting a lot of information out there, and so if a child's identity is stolen, you may not know about it for 15 or 20 years, and in that time, so much damage can be done. We're also seeing the same issue with elders as well. Seniors are very vulnerable to identity theft and cybercrime. Even those seniors that are well educated. My dad is 75 years old, and he called me a couple months ago and said, I just gave my social security number to someone on the phone. I said, Dad, why'd you do that? You know what I do for a living, right? So we had to go through that, got him signed up with an account, and he's covered now. Nothing has showed up yet, but it's those types of simple mistakes. It was the way that Charles was describing the incredible sneakiness of these thieves who know how to send you a message that's really going to prey on what your concern is and allow you to sort of let your guard down and open up. to that type of theft. And beyond just theft as well, we really have to be focused on protecting children online, not just cyberbullying, but there's all kinds of different predators out there looking to take advantage of children. And so it's so important for you to also have a solution that is going to be smart enough to be able to monitor your children's online activities and understand the context of the different posts and things that are happening online. For example, cyberbullying, if you had a solution that was just monitoring keywords and it was just saying, oh, if we see anything about hate or kill or something along those lines, then we'll let you know that your child's being bullied. Well, we know that kids will say things like, oh man, you killed it yesterday in the soccer game. And so that's not cyberbullying. And you might be getting so many alerts from your child's very active social feed, that you may kind of become deaf to it. So it's really important to have a solution that is smart enough to understand context and really provide you with customized, relevant information when it's alerting you to things involving your family. So in recapping, the road to cyber wellness is a long and windy one. There are a lot of different things that you have to do to achieve full cyber wellness. First of all, getting your identity covered. If you're an individual and you're getting identity theft protection through your company, we see those prices a little under $10 a month. But again, that identity theft alone leaves you exposed. So you also want to look at some device security, device protection, antivirus, anti-malware, billions of different vendors out there. We're seeing those average about $4 a month. If you get some additional protections for that Wi-Fi network that you're using at home, or of course, portable protection that can go with you to whatever Wi-Fi network you're going to be accessing, you'll need another subscription for that. That's averaging a little over $8 a month. Tons of social reputation tools are out there. We see so many point vendors in this space. Another subscription, another $8. Asset protection, you may have seen new companies popping up like Home Title Lock. Subscriptions for that type of protection are averaging around $15 a month. This is a new and relatively challenging part of protection, so we're seeing those prices go up. And privacy solutions can be very expensive. Again, with privacy, it's so labor intensive. There's so much constant work that has to be done behind the scenes to continue to protect your privacy and remove your data, that those subscriptions get awfully expensive as well. And then of course, if you want to add any of your family members, upgrade any of these plans from individual to family, you'll see some increase in cost there as well. So not only are you looking at about $80 a month, you're also probably going to have 6 to 7 different subscriptions, which means 6 different logins, 6 different tools to learn, 6 different customer support lines to call if you have questions or need help. And from an employer's perspective, if this looks exhausting for you as you're thinking about yourself and your family, imagine how exhausting it would be for all of your employees. You just simply cannot expect your employees to take all of this action on their own and maintain all these different subscriptions in order to achieve cyber wellness. But it's so important. It is literally the most common crime, but it's also the most ignored, underreported, and misunderstood crime as well. Identity theft is. Cybercrime in general is happening so often. In fact, this slide right here is probably already out of date because these statistics were compiled earlier this year, and we know since COVID started, cybercrime has gone through the roof. But if you think about your total employee population and what really applies universally across the board, identity theft protection is something that every single employee should have. Everybody's online, everybody's doing a lot of things digitally these days, and so cybersecurity is something that should be considered for each and every employee. Now, we do need to talk about the impact to the employer, right? We understand that helping your employees become cyber healthy and well overall, physical, mental, and financially healthy as well is really important to the company. But let's talk a little bit more about exactly why that is and what is the direct correlation between employees and their employers, and how can employees put their employers at risk. It's really a well-known fact that employees are, while they are your greatest asset, they also can be your biggest liability when it comes to cybersecurity. So here's an example, everyday occurrence. You're on one of those unsecure or not quite as secure Wi-Fi networks. You're using a personal device and someone's able to hack into that and get some sensitive information about you or your family members. So let's talk about what happens, when this kind of information is exposed, and really how this impacts everybody who's involved. It can impact the employee. Of course, identity theft is, like I said, one of the most common crimes, and that can lead to a lot of pain for the employee, financial loss, time spent trying to undo all of this. There's so many different things that come from identity theft for an individual, but this also could affect your family. Think about if you have a child who is preparing to go off to college and applying for student loans, and something has happened to interrupt your credit score, your bank account, and that could certainly have an impact on that. Or an elderly parent is planning to move into a retirement home, and having those funds disrupted could really cause serious problems for the family there. But really, from the employer standpoint, it's really important to understand that everyday occurrences happening by your employees on their personal devices, on their personal time, is still a risk for the company. So in this example, we've got some basic information. Maybe the hacker stole some details like my middle name or a password that I use for my personal email account. It's so easy just to take a very small amount of information and, through a process called credential stuffing, be able to identify what are the most likely combinations of usernames and passwords in order to access the company network. So it is so important for employers to protect or empower their employees to protect themselves, both at work and at home, because we do know that last year, 81% of all company breaches were the direct result of personal identity theft. We saw a couple of examples earlier in the presentation today showing how easy it is for hackers to just get a tiny amount of information and turn that into a wide open door for a company. So one of the key things to remember here is that if you are in this kind of situation and your employees do have identity theft protection would not prevent this type of intrusion. Identity theft protection would allow this type of intrusion to happen, and then once the hacker has the data and goes to commit a crime, that's when you learn about it through identity theft protection. So it's so important for your employees to have tools that are proactively preventing this type of everyday occurrence from happening in the first place. And we all know the cost of a data breach is significant. It could be to the point of ending a company. Last year's average cost of data breach across all companies, all different sizes, all industries, was almost $4 million. So for a smaller company, that could literally put you out of business. We usually hear about the big ones on the news. The Equifax breach, I've read something recently that said they've spent over $2 billion with a B, working to restore everything back, increasing their security, paying fines and penalties, and then also working to restore people's faith in their company. So the cost of data breaches goes well beyond the actual monetary cost, and it usually takes years to recover from. But there's also another type of impact that we know about for employers when it comes to their employees being victims of crimes. And I think with identity theft, or cyber theft, people don't necessarily think about the victimization and how much this really impacts the person. Being a victim of a cyber crime can be as upsetting and damaging to your personal life as being the victim of a violent crime. There's just so much disruption, so much confusion, and so many urgent needs to tend to that it really can take you away from what you're doing at work. We actually see unwinding the mess that's caused by cyber crime. It takes people anywhere from 12 to 25 working days in order to resolve all of that. I mean, that's almost a month of one of your employees' time spent trying to resolve the problems caused by identity theft or cybercrime. Employees have definitely reported being, less interested in work, less productive. And 1 out of 3 employees are saying that it's causing problems for them at work. They're trying to manage this. They might have colleagues who are having to pick up their slack, and it can really affect the entire office. And of course, it also leads to additional costs for the employers. We know that, lost productivity, turnover, and other things like that are a huge impact to the bottom line for employers. So these examples are just some calculations that we did based on an average salary of $50,000 a year, and on the fact that we know 33% of your employees are likely to become victims of cybercrime. So if you're looking at a third of your population missing 12 to 25 days a year to focus on these types of things, you can see how quickly that adds up for companies of all sizes. And in fact, we actually did a survey. Aura partnered with ITRC, the Identity Theft Resource Center, to conduct a massive survey this year. We actually conducted the survey in May. So this was done, as COVID was happening. So these are kind of more real-time statistics, I think, to see how employees and employers think about cybercrime. So what we did was we interviewed 1,500 employees and then 1,500 employers as well. And we asked them really similar questions. And what we found out was that people who have been victims of a cybercrime or have been using cyber wellness tools for themselves and their families are so much more cyber aware and are able to really be more invested in their company's cybersecurity. So by giving your employees tools that are relevant to them and help them in their own lives, you're helping to educate them on how to protect the company. Over 92% of people we surveyed said that the solution that they're using for their personal protection is really helping them be more aware of how they need to work with work devices and on the work networks. And then some of the employers had, really similar observations. Once they had provided these types of tools for their employees, they saw that about 3/4 of employees were more aware of cybersecurity best practices because they were focused on how to achieve cyber wellness in their personal lives, and that rolls over directly to the company. So cyber wellness, education, tools, proactive prevention, all of that is so important ultimately to keeping the employer safe from breach and also reducing the amount of lost time and money due to turnover or lost productivity. So it is a constantly changing landscape. We have seen a ton of different examples of how you could get scammed on a daily basis. They're literally popping up every day. These hackers they're brilliant. They're always finding new ways to get around the walls that we put up. And I believe it was Charles at the beginning giving the example of, a firewall at your company. We figured out from a technology perspective how to prevent that type of intrusion. But all it takes is confusing one person, getting one person to make a very human error, like clicking a link on an email that looks legitimate, like my dad giving away his social security number to someone he thought worked at his bank. These types of things happen all the time, and these hackers are always coming up with new ways to confuse us and to get access to our information. So it's so important that you stay up to date with what's happening out there, how to achieve cyber wellness, what's available for free, what's available, as a purchased item. And so we have built this incredible website. It's almost live. We're expecting to launch it October 15th, but this is basically a cyber wellness resource for employers to be able to come to understand what is cyber wellness and how is it affecting your employees and in turn affecting your company as a whole. So be on the lookout for this great new resource coming up. We've got white papers, infographics, webinars, podcasts, all kinds of things that can easily be used to help educate your colleagues. Maybe take some of this to your board, and be able, like Jim was saying, to really build a case for the board. And also, of course, to be able to educate your employees. And like I said, you really constantly have to stay on top of this ever evolving industry. Cybercrime is almost an industry in itself. It's unbelievable how much people are making from ransomware and other things these days. So you need to also partner or find a tool that is extremely innovative and very agile, able to add new features as these new threat vectors are constantly emerging in the market. So this is just an example of a new feature that we're planning to launch in the next few months as a part of our Aura Digital Halo. This will enable our users to mask credit cards and email addresses. So if you have a Amazon.com account, which many of us do, you can use an encrypted or masked email address so that if they are hacked, your email address will not be exposed. Same thing with your credit cards. I know it's so easy to go into Amazon and do that one-click buying. So keeping your credit cards on file, it's helpful. It's, again, one of those, we trade security for convenience. In our system, you would still be able to have all of that convenience, but you could use a masked credit card number so that if they are hacked and that information gets out, it's not your credit card number they get their hands on. And there's really nothing that those hackers can do with a masked number. We're also building in more security education. Aware and educated employees are your frontline defenders, your best line of defense. And then, of course, being able to have a platform that quickly reacts to all these new and emerging threats is just really so important, because there's constantly just new ways for thieves to get in there and get your information. So I'm excited to announce that everybody who attended today's webinar will be given access to a 6-month free Aura Digital Halo family account. So that means that you will get access to all of our tools around identity theft protection, device and Wi-Fi security, and privacy as well. And you can expand those protections to your family members or even friends that are like family. And so we'll send out a link after today, but we really encourage everyone to sign up, give it a try, see how you like it, and let us help educate you on all of the different areas of risk that you can plan for, prevent, and be proactive about keeping all of your information safe and secure.